Mr. Netanyahu, I would like to ask it in English. As we all know, Israel fully withdrew from Gaza and is no longer responsible for the administration of the territory. Regarding the West Bank, the situation is different and the area remains under occupation under Israeli law. Your government is actively advancing now the regularization law that would extend Israeli law to parts of this area while not imposing Israeli law on most of the residents. The government supports this legislation, your government, despite your own Attorney General deeming it illegal. And I would like to know, how would this work? How can a law be imposed on the land, but not on a segment of the population that's living there? And why is the government supporting legislation against the advice of your Attorney General? And finally, will the occupation ever end under your leadership? And Frau Merkel, angesichts... Ja, aber alle haben auch. Der illegalen Besatzung Israels und der illegalen Siedlungen. Warum liest die Bundesregierung überhaupt Drohnen von Israel, wenn das Land permanent Völkerrecht bricht und das sich selbst auf illegaler Weise Atomwaffen beschafft hat? Wie können Sie das verantworten?
The question of this law is always put before our courts. Our courts are independent courts, and they decide whatever they decide. We follow their ruling. On the question of the peace between us, the end of the occupation, as you call it, okay? I think that the Jewish people have some connection to the Jewish homeland. It's only 4,000 years ago, 3,800 years ago to be more precise, that Abraham came to that land, and we've been connected to it for 4 millennia. We don't try to push out anyone. I certainly don't want to push out anyone, and I want to live in peace with the Palestinians who happen to be living in my homeland, which happens to be a common place where we have to organize a way to live. The Palestinians have consistently refused the ideas of coexistence and even the ideas of two states. Hamas certainly refuses to recognize two states. They openly say that they want to destroy the Jewish state. We left all of Gaza, and they promptly turned it into an armed camp in which they fire thousands of rockets against us, they burn our fields, and they try to storm into Israel and murder members of the kibbutzim and moshavim who are there, or kidnap our soldiers. So Hamas is half the Palestinian population, or Gaza is governed by, the 2 million people of Gaza are governed by people who are openly committed to our destruction. The other 2 million in the West Bank have had ample opportunity, and they still have an opportunity, to negotiate a peace with us. They have walked away from such proposals time and time again. They walked away in 1947, the partition resolution. They rejected it. They rejected successive offers by Israeli governments and American governments, Camp David with President Clinton, suggestions that were made to Prime Minister Olmert, very generous suggestion. They walked away from it. And even the promise or the offer that was made by President Obama with Secretary Kerry to negotiate, something that I didn't fully agree with. I had my reservations, but I had said that I will consider this proposal, certainly willing to negotiate it. Abu Mazen, the head of the Palestinian Authority in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, he walked away from it, and he still hasn't come back. Today he says he will not consider an American proposal because the Trump administration is pro-Israeli. Well, I didn't use the counter-argument against an Obama proposal. If you're serious about peace, then sit down and negotiate peace. And if you're serious about peace, recognize that Israel cannot afford to have additional Palestinian territory used as bases against us. We have gotten out of territory that was immediately used not for peace, but to attack us. So any country would insist not only on our historical rights and our legal rights, the rights of Jews to live anywhere. I wouldn't tell you that Jews cannot live here, and you wouldn't say that Jews cannot live in our ancestral homeland. But as far as negotiating a political deal, an end to this conflict, there is really one problem. It's not the absence of a Palestinian state that has been offered time and again. It's the Jewish state. The Palestinians in the West Bank, too, say they will never recognize a Jewish state. And that's the reason this conflict doesn't get solved. It doesn't get solved because because of this or that territorial dispute. It's the very refusal to accept a Jewish state in any borders that has been preventing a solution to this conflict for a century. For decades before the State of Israel was born, and for 7 years after the State of Israel has come into being. If you want to ask me what is the single thing that will move peace forward, it's the recognition, finally, by the Palestinians of the right of the Jewish people to have a state in their ancestral homeland, where we can discuss where the border should be, what arrangements should be. Yes, I think this is subject to those negotiations that I've always agreed to have. But I think it starts with that. And I repeat that here. This is not a soundbite, but it is a deep truth. The reason there is no peace is because the Palestinians refuse to recognize a Jewish state in any borders. Once that hurdle is overcome, we shall have peace. We may not overcome it so quickly with the Palestinians, but I think we're making some progress with the rest of the Arab world, which is 99% of the Arab population in the world. So it may be that we'll get agreement with the Arabs. It'll take time. And maybe it'll happen in stages in order to then get agreement with the Palestinians. But if it happens tomorrow and the Palestinians and Abu Mazen says, we recognize the Jewish state, we'll have peace very quickly.
Für uns gehört das Existenzrecht Israels zur Staatsräson. Und Sie haben eben an den Ausführungen des Premierministers gesehen, dass dieses Existenzrecht jeden Tag in der Region bezweifelt wird, auch in der unmittelbaren Nachbarschaft, zum Beispiel durch die Hamas. Wir sind unterschiedlicher Meinung in verschiedenen Fragen, zum Beispiel der Siedlungspolitik. Aber alles in allem ist dieses Recht auf Sicherheit Israels jeden Tag bedroht. Und deshalb sind wir Partner und deshalb werden wir natürlich auch, wenn es um hochtechnologische Produkte geht, Handel mit Israel betreiben, auch in dem Bereich der Drohnen, die im Übrigen herausragende Arbeit in Mali leisten als Überwachungsdrohnen und die Sicherheit unserer Soldaten garantieren oder zumindest sehr viel verbessern. Dankeschön.